Hello, welcome to this screencast on planning lessons only once for in-person, distance, and hybrid instruction. We hope this will provide you with assistance as you plan to meet the needs of all learners this year, knowing that some will remain at home even when other students are back in class. To access the slide deck with the hyperlinks, please go to bit.ly/SD Catholic Hyflex. That's SD Catholic HYFLEX.
Here we go. Pivot. 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 Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, I don't think it's going to pivot anymore. You think?
So many of us are tired of pivoting at this point, that's for sure. It's a challenging situation and the information we're all receiving keeps changing. Overall though, our focus when designing units and lessons needs to remain on what matters most. What do we want students to know and be able to do at the end of a lesson or unit? I know at this point we have welcomed back, or we are preparing to welcome back, many of our students. However, we have to keep in mind that there will most likely always be students working from home. It is unlikely that we will have one class of students as a coherent unit this year. During this time, it may be tempting to rely on simply assigning packets to students working from home, rather than keeping a focus on clear learning outcomes for all students, regardless of where they may be working from. We also know that the demands on educators are higher than ever, so we'd like to provide you with some guidance on how to plan once so you don't have to plan multiple times for the same course. It's important to be efficient in your planning process as there are many demands on your time. We'd like to begin by defining two terms that have become widely used, but often used differently depending on the context. Hybrid learning combines face-to-face instruction with online learning. A hybrid model would reduce the number of students in the building by moving some of the course delivery online. So typically this would be an A-B schedule of students in the school. Whereas Hyflex learning is a flexible hybrid approach. It's a model that allows students the flexibility to participate in a course asynchronously online, synchronously online, face-to-face, or some combination of these three elements. It's a flexible model as we recognize that students will be home for extended periods of time. Even schools that are utilizing a hybrid approach will often engage in Hyflex learning throughout the year. In March, we were trying to plan for distance learning by moving our in-person instruction online. This time, we'd like to encourage you to plan for distance learning and adapt when students are in front of you. To do this, don't try to plan two different courses. Use your LMS, which may be Google Classroom, Seesaw, or Canvas, all year long for posting and submitting assignments. Think about the goals for the lesson or the unit. What is it that you want students to know and be able to do by the end of the lesson or unit? And these goals should guide instruction across environments. So the best practice is to plan for distance learning for the entire year to ensure a flexible and resilient pedagogy. Flexible and resilient pedagogy is resistant to disruption and change in the environment. This is a term that emerged after the pandemic began. There's no one right or optimal way to make this work, but we adapt to whatever our students need at the time. Aiming to make our plans both flexible and resilient will allow us to roll with any changes that might come, and will also carry us through post-pandemic teaching and will lead to more equitable approach in meeting the needs of our students. This can work for a hybrid situation, if you have an A-B day, or if you're streaming classes. Essentially, you're creating one unit plan that can work for both face-to-face and online. Here are some practical guidelines. Use the same lesson flow and assignment organizers. So create a routine that you plan to keep for the same for a month or two. So every Monday this happens, every Tuesday this happens, etc. Do the same for your daily routines. Think of one good way to start class, one good way to deliver instruction, one good way to allow for student practice, and one good way to close class. All links to resources and assignments should be found in the same place on the same LMS. Use hyperdocs, playlists, and choice boards whenever possible. Make mini screencasts with an explanation for all students to view. Students in class and students at home can benefit, as they'll be able to rewatch and pause if they miss something. This will provide you with some time to be able to check in with students who may need additional help. You can repurpose video instruction in many ways to maximize their value, and even for years to come. They will also make planning for substitute teachers a lot easier. Additionally, parents get a window into your classroom, and this provides you with time to individually meet with students or small groups. Keep consistent due dates and collect assignments weekly. Many of our schools have found success with posting all assignments on Monday and have them due Friday, or assign Friday and do the following Monday. This allows for flexibility and choice over when they get their work done, but it also saves you a lot of time. Assign students to small groups that they can collaborate with in the classroom and virtually. This can work similarly to how you might have students sitting in teams or working with assigned partners. The groups could be consistent, heterogeneous groups that students meet with regularly so they can build connections. If you're doing a hybrid model, having kids stay in their groups for both the classroom and virtual breakouts might be an idea. Of course, these groups could always be monitored and adjusted. By now we've heard that you should choose just a few open-ended tech tools for the majority of your lessons. You can see the last slide in the slide deck for some examples of lesson activities that can be used online or in person. At first, just incorporate a few tools. You can always add later as you and your students become more familiar with the tools. For now, keeping things simple is the way to manage a Hyflex environment. Repurpose video instruction. Creating screencasts is time-consuming. However, consider the amount of time you spend repeating yourself in a traditional classroom environment. If you have students streaming into your class, this will only be amplified. You can reuse the videos for years to come. This also provides you with some time so you can monitor student learning and provide feedback. Grade fewer assignments, focus more on feedback and less on grading. And please see the one-pagers that are hyperlinked here for feedback and grading onto our Continuity of Learning website. Make assessments about feedback and learning. Students can learn without grades, but it's challenging for them to learn without feedback. You can create a comment bank in Google Docs or record video messages via Flipgrid, providing students with constructive verbal feedback. You only want to grade assignments that are true and accurate measures of what students know and are able to do. Inform parents that you'll be focusing on feedback as it is critical to the learning process, so they may see fewer formal grades. Make your real-time meetings engaging and interactive, so add in humor, do a social-emotional check-in, and make sure you incorporate peer interactions. If you make videos for students to watch, try to make the streaming time about making connections and extra academic support. And finally, use more small group and individual check-ins and less whole class instruction. Try using the lesson flows that are linked in this presentation in order to provide you with the time to be able to meet small groups, both virtually and in person, in order to increase connection opportunities with students. So next, Mary Cordero is going to walk you through a couple of mini units and share how they could work in a Hyflex environment.
Hi everyone. I created a couple of mini units that I'd like to share with you and talk to you about the thinking that took place while I was creating these units. I created these basic units as a skeleton or backbone for your daily lesson plans, always thinking at this time to plan for remote but adjust for in-person. So when I'm planning, I always like to start with the learning intentions, what we want students to learn in the lesson at the end of the week or at the end of the unit. So regardless of your instructional materials, we want to start with the end in mind. What is it we intend our students to learn? So as you can tell in this unit template, we have our learning intentions, what I'm intending students to learn, and what I'm intending them to be able to do with their learning. Next, I took a look at the priority standards, and I'd like to show you those on the San Diego Catholic Professional Learning page. There's a list of priority standards that were created with Star Renaissance, and you're able to locate those here. Let's go back to the unit. Due to our shift in March to distance or remote learning, we had many challenges. Therefore, beginning this year, we must be really thoughtful and diligent to address unfinished learning and use those priority standards. I created this unit to focus on characters because this is an engaging unit for the beginning of the year. Characters drive a story, and frankly, without them, the stories would be pretty boring. So this unit is replicated also in Atlas and can be found once again on that continuity of learning page that I pointed out earlier. So how I would set this up in the classroom if I were teaching in a Hyflex environment, I have a couple of ideas for you. So if you have kids calling in and you do not have live streaming, but you have Zoom available to you, you may set up a buddy with a laptop to have the child pair up with somebody in the classroom, and that can be the voice for the student at home. They can comment in the chat and be able to either ask questions or share their thinking. Another idea would be if your school has the technology to live stream classes so that the students at home are part of the class. You could also do a pre-recorded lesson so that students both in class and at home would have access to the pre-recorded lesson and be able to go back and visit that if they had questions. And if you are using Zoom, you could be recording your lesson as it's happening in the classroom. So this is, like I said, a skeleton for your daily lesson. And I want you to be flexible with yourself. I just put, I think it's a week up here, time period. But, you know, as you're assessing the students, you'll know better where they are with their learning and if you need to adjust for either a longer period of time or shorter period of time. But I'd like to take a daily lesson out of this for you. I would first start with the whole group, and I want to keep my lesson flow the same every day so that the kids will be prepared and know that when I come to class, I'm ready to learn blank. So we're always going to start with the whole group mini lesson, either a shared read or interactive read aloud with a focus on I'm learning how to ask and answer questions. I'm learning how to find evidence from the text. Then after this whole group lesson, we might move into stations and moving, not really moving, but one station will be the teacher table. One station might be offline doing independent reading. One station may be practicing the language that we're going to use in this unit. And you could use something like an IXL or Freckle. One may be independent reading, and with the same focus, the same common thread throughout, regardless if the students are at home or in person. So next, I'd like to show you, I also did a nonfiction or informational text unit, and this is a first grade unit. And like I said before, you're going to have fewer standards. They're the priority standards that you will go deeply with. So these are the standards that will hit across many content areas as well. So when we look at this nonfiction unit, you'll notice I started with my learning intentions, and then I went up to my standards, and it's the same exact method, keeping the lesson flow the same. But for this one, I may link in magazine articles or different texts I want the kids to use. I may also just give them choice and say that they could use a magazine at home, a newspaper, a cereal box, environmental text that they can find in their home, or also give them the option to draw a graph or map or chart and write a caption for it. Many ways that we can do this: take a picture, upload it to your Google Classroom, but as Julie stated earlier, keep everything in that one LMS so that it's easy for the kids to find, it's easy for the teacher to find, and for the parents so that they're not confused. And this is a list for you to explore later on different activities that can be done in person and remotely. This list is from the Angela Watson article that's linked in the sources at the end of this. And finally, here are the sources we use to develop this slide deck. There are many great resources here, and we'd like to just say thank you for listening, and please reach out if you have any questions.